Okay, so today is session 16 in the first semester of this class on braided fusion category. Okay, so last week we started the section on centralizer. The chapter on centralizer, the subsection dedicated to define what is a centralizer, even if we already mentioned that several times before. So, okay, so we explained that. Okay, so the centralizer of fusion subcategory is a fusion subcategory, etc. We explained that. So we finished by the characterization of the simple object in the centralizer in terms of the entry of the S-tilde matrix. Remember, the S-tilde matrix is invariant. It's an invariant of the category. So there is a way to characterize this way, etc. Another thing here. Okay, so here I ask a question. I don't want to come back to this question. I was wondering what is the difference between this equality and this equality. So you see here you have yz, here you have vy, here you have an integer, you have a number. So the only difference is the order here. So if they wanted to add this implies, unless I'm mistaken, that the S tilde is not symmetric in general. For the S matrix for premodular fusion category, we prove that the S matrix is symmetric, but maybe in this case. So let us check that as an exercise. But anyway, it's not the point of the class today. Okay, so example of centralizer in the pointed case. Example 3.3. Cool. So you take a premetric group, and you take a subgroup, B subgroup. Now, so you consider C to be the pointed braided fusion category corresponding to this premetric group. So if C is the pointed braided fusion category corresponding to this premetric group, and you take a fusion subcategory corresponding to a subgroup, H, K corresponds. So the fusion subcategory K corresponds to the subgroup H in G. Then the centralizer of K, corresponds to the orthogonal of H with respect to the bilinear form induced by Q. With respect to the bilinear form B induced by Q. And this, so this is true by the equation 27. So let me recall what is that. This follows directly from equation 27, which is the following. So equation 27 is just the bilinear form is nothing but the double braiding. But remember, the centralizer is something regarding the double braiding. And when we talk about orthogonal, you are thinking of this to be trivial. So when exactly when you are considering the exactly as for the centralizer. So that's okay. So now we will consider the main property of the centralizer. So we will, so in the pointed case, this main property reduced to well-known property of orthogonal in group theory or premetric group theory, but we will not talk about that in details. We will just, not just, but we will discuss the main property in general, not in the pointed case. But no, you have to know that in the pointed case, it corresponds to well-known property of a premetric group orthogonal, etc. Orthogonal complement. So we now outline the main properties of centralizers. So in the pointed case, so as discussed in previous example, see example 3, example 3.3. The coming theorem we will state and prove soon. So 3.4, 3.10, 3.13 reduce to well-known properties of orthogonal complement on premetric group. To well-known properties of orthogonal complement. Okay. So now, in general, given a fusion category, subcategory in a braided fusion category, so given a fusion subcategory D in a braided fusion category C, we will define an equivalence relation on the simple object of C. And this will be understood as, so you have D, it's a fusion subcategory of C. You have the centralizer of D, which is denoted D star. And the equivalence relation we will explain now will correspond to two simple objects R equivalent if they are in the same component. If you see the category C as a D prime module. Okay, so you have C is a module over the centralizer of D, and the incomposable component corresponding to this, you have two simple objects in the same component. If only they are equivalent in the sense we will explain now. So we define an equivalence relation, and we will mention after the definition of the equivalence relation that it corresponds to the component of the D prime module of C, for C as a D prime module. So an equivalence relation on the simple object of C as follows. So two objects Y, Z simple are equivalent if there exists an object W in the centralizer such that Y is a subobject of Z tensor W. Is a subobject of Z tensor W. And according to this definition, it is easy to see that this is really an equivalence relation. It is straightforward. To verify that this defines an equivalence relation. An equivalence relation. Okay. On the simple object. So let me just check the transitivity, and the rest you can see as an exercise. So we can see this as an exercise. So for example, regarding transitivity, so you have the Y1 is a subobject of Y2 tensor W1. So Y1 and Y2 are equivalent according to are in relation according to the previous definition, and W1 is an element of the centralizer, and you have Y2 is in relation with Y3 in the sense that it's the subobject of Y3 tensor W2, with W2 another object of the centralizer. This implies that Y1 tensor W1 tensor W2, but we already know that the centralizer is a fusion subcategory. So this is already in the centralizer, and so it implies that Y1 is in relation with Y3. So you have the transitivity. And you can prove as an exercise, if you like, these two other axioms to get an equivalence relation. So now. Okay. So we will call the full abelian subcategory generated by an equivalent class a D prime component. The full abelian subcategory of C generated by an equivalence class under this relation is called a D prime component. And now we will explain the relation with the module. So this terminology is justified by the module theory. So C has a D prime module. So this terminology is justified by the fact that Y and Z are equivalent if and only if they lie in the same indecomposable component of the D prime module category C. If and only if they lie in the same indecomposable component of the D prime module category C. So C has a structure of D prime module category. So in the paper that they suggested to look to the paper by Ostrich 2003 for the definition of fusion of module category, but in fact, this paper of Ostrich is reported in the EGNO book. So you should see otherwise directly EGNO book in chapter 7. Chapter 7 called module category. There, everything is defined in great details regarding module category. And so there you will understand why this terminology is justified. Okay, so D prime component. Okay. So now we will consider a result, generalizing result by Neuger and Bruguière, exactly as we said before, without non-degenerate assumption or without spherical assumption, premodular assumption. So the following result generalize Bruguière. Uh, 2000 theorem 3.1 and Neuger 2003 theorem 3.2. Okay, so you take, as before, a fusion subcategory of a braided fusion category. So let D in C be a fusion subcategory of a braided fusion category C. Consider the S-tilde matrix. So you have the S-tilde matrix on C, but now we will consider a submatrix. Consider the submatrix of S-tilde defined as follows. So you only consider, so you have row and column. Oh. And you only, so you truncate the, so for the column, you take everything, but for the row, you truncate to the simple object of D. So as before, as follow. So a submatrix indexed by D. So S, X, Y. So X is a simple object of D. So you restrict to that, you truncate, but Y is any simple object. So you should not truncate both variables, only one variable is truncated. So it can be the row or the column. I never remember the convention, which one should be the row, which one should be the column. Anyway, so you truncate only one component. Of course, the S-tilde matrix is the S-tilde matrix with D equals C. Like that. So let's state one of the main theorem of this chapter. But it will be stated in this section, but proved in section 3.4. So here is the theorem. So in this, in fact, in this section, we will state, so we will prove, in this section, we will prove something, but for the more complicated theorem, they will be proved in a dedicated section. In this chapter, in this big section 3, there will be subsection dedicated to prove such big theorem. So let C be a braided fusion category. So again, it's always the same thing. The braided fusion category. And let D in C be a fusion subcategory. Subcategory. And we will discuss the rank of this submatrix. So the rank of this is equal to the number of D prime component of C. So that's why we introduce this notion of D prime component. The number of equivalence class according to the previous equivalence relation defined before. So the number of D prime component of C. In particular, this imply the first reformulation for the notion of non-degenerate. So this is very important. C is non-degenerate. So the S-tilde matrix is invertible. If and only if the centralizer of C is trivial. And this last, so the first sentence will be proved in subsection 3.4. Maybe in subsection 3.4, we will also discuss the last section, sentence, but you can see the last sentence directly here. Why the last sentence is okay? Because you take W, so W should be in the centralizer. So you take W equal 1, trivial. Okay, so let me think. Here you are thinking about, so we assume this sentence that will be approved in this section. In particular, you can take D equals C. And we know we have that. Where D equals C. So what is the point? The number of D components, the rank. Okay. So you take W equal to 1 here, and then you have the rank. The rank of S tilde is equal to the cardinal, the number of simple objects up to isomorphism. So take W equal 1. What does it mean? Okay. So let me come back. Let me quickly come back before, otherwise, if I'm not able to explain the details now, I will leave it as an exercise. Where is it? So in general, define the equivalence relation. So two objects are equivalent if there exists an object W such that Y is a subobject of the tensor W. Okay. Yeah. So because, for example, assume the commutant, the centralizer of D is trivial. So you first assume this case. The centralizer of D is trivial, so the only possible W is the W equal to 1, because this is trivial. So two simple objects are equivalent if and only if they are isomorphic. But because we are considering up to isomorphism, in fact, because you only put 1, the number of equivalence class is exactly the number of simple objects. So in this case, wait a minute. In this case, you have the rank is the rank. Now in this case, the rank is everything. So the rank is the maximal rank possible. So the rank is total. So this should be invertible by definition. If the rank is total, if the rank is exactly the size of the matrix, then it means it is invertible. So if you have that, this implies that. Okay. And conversely, if this is non-degenerate, so the rank is total. So you have the rank should be everything. And it should not be complicated to see. But if the rank is everything, it means that two different simple objects cannot be equivalent. But if this implies that you can only take W equal to 1, because if you can take another W which is not equal to 1, then the tensor, this will develop, you will reach another simple object different from Z, and so you cannot, so maybe that requires more detail, but you cannot get, so it's a kind of contradiction. So this way is clear, this way is almost clear, but maybe you need some more details, but maybe we should discuss that in more details in this section. But at least you can see, because this is a very important point, the alternative way to characterize the non-degeneracy by the centralizer. Okay. So I will discuss that in more details in this section. Okay, so now we can state a consequence of this very important theorem, corollary 3.5. So what this consequence about? So this is, so here we have a characterization of non-degeneracy in terms of centralizer. Now, we want to characterize the non-degeneracy of not of C, but of fusion subcategory D. We take a fusion subcategory D. So what is the characterization for that to be non-degenerate? And it's the following. And in fact, it will be immediate from which theorem? It will be immediate from the previous theorem. That's the last sentence of the previous theorem. So let's see. So okay, which is really, really boring. We have to write the same sentence every time. So I will copy and paste this. Like that. Let's C be a Brady fusion category. Let D be a fusion subcategory. Fusion subcategory. So D be a Brady fusion. Okay. So the sentence is not like that. So just this beginning. So a fusion subcategory D is not degenerate. Degenerate if and only if the intersection of D with its centralizer is trivial. And you see, it's immediate from the last sentence of the previous theorem. So, immediate from the last sentence of theorem 3.5.4 of the previous theorem. Sorry. Let me drink a little bit. Because D intersection D prime in C, so this fusion subcategory, this is exactly So the intersection of D with its centralizer as subcategory of C is exactly the centralizer of D in D. So if you consider D, you consider the centralizer of D in D, this is exactly meaning this intersection. So I hope I am not confusing. The notion of centralizer depends on where the category is included in. And in fact, I will mention that later, but in fact, there is a very nice analogy with the notion of commutant of an algebra, of a set, if you want, if you have a set included in some von Neumann algebra. You can consider the commutant of this set it's in the same notation. It looks like the notion of centralizer. Anyway, so here the centralizer, the notation here is as a subcategory of C, but by in D here I said this is a centralizer as a subcategory of D. But these two are the same. So this is exactly, you can apply this last sentence here, and you are saying that just this is equal to Vex. So this is immediate. Okay. Let me write. Maybe. It's actually D prime when D is considered as a fusion subcategory of D. Okay. So it's not a mistake. I repeated 2 times D. D can be seen as a subcategory of D. And in this case, there's no notion of centralizer. And so you can apply this thing, but it's immediate to see that this is the same thing as that. Okay. I repeated 3 times the same thing, which is straightforward. So let's continue. So next corollary. Corollary 3.6. What this is about? Let's give now. Okay, so now it's not about D to be non-degenerate. Here we assume C to be non-degenerate, and okay. So then if C is already non-degenerate, then the number of D prime component of C is exactly the rank of D. By rank of a fusion category, I mean the number of simple objects to isomorphism. So let D be a fusion subcategory of a non-degenerate braided fusion category C. Then the number of D prime component of C is equal to the rank of D, which is can be noted like that: the number of elements in the set of simple objects up to isomorphism. And the proof of that is the following. So C is non-degenerate. So the S tilde matrix is non-degenerate, is invertible. In particular, every subset of the set of rows of the S tilde matrix are linearly independent. In particular, if you fix the set of rows corresponding to D, it should be linearly independent. So it's immediate. Since C is non-degenerate, the row of S tilde D prime, S tilde D, sorry, must be linearly independent. Must be linearly independent, and so the number is exactly the number of row, so this is rank of D. Linearly independent. Okay. So the next proposition collect all the equivalence reformulation of non-degenerate. So we already proved one with the centralizer, but there will be another one regarding factorizable. So we now collect several equivalent condition for a braided fusion category to be non-degenerate. To be non-degenerate. So we already saw one in the last sentence of proposition 3.4. And so, as I said, the other one will be regarding factorizable property. So it's time for the pause. Okay, so the equivalence condition for non-degenerate. So we already saw the first. So proposition 3.7. The following are equivalent for braided fusion category C. The following are equivalent for a braided fusion category C. First, C is non-degenerate. Okay. So recall that it was defined in definition 228. The second, the centralizer of C is trivial. Okay, so that we already proved. And so the point of this proposition is the third regarding factorizable property. So you consider the braided functor from C, the Lie tensor C up to the Drinfeld center of C be the unique braided functor restriction to C and C op coincide with what we defined before. So we already discussed that several times. So whose restriction to C and C op coincide with those defined in section 2.10, but don't worry, because in the proof of this proposition, we will need to recall how C and C op embed into the Drinfeld center. So at that point, you will remember the embedding. Then G is an equivalence. So as we already mentioned before, it means that, in other words, C is factorizable. Okay. Okay, so the first equivalence is already the last sentence of the previous theorem. So equivalence I equivalence to 2I is proved in the last sentence of theorem 3.4. Now we want to prove 2 equivalence to 3. To establish 2 equivalent to 3. So first, note that regarding Frobenius-Perron dimension, the Frobenius-Perron dimension of the center of C is equal to the Frobenius-Perron dimension of C squared. So I don't know if we already recall that before or not, but otherwise you can see, for example, in Egno book it is it is proved, which is the Frobenius-Perron dimension of C tensor C op. Okay. Yeah, I guess we discussed that in equation 25. Ici. Where is it? Yeah, equation 25 is exactly, we have the square. So this is equation 25. And this, in fact, follows from the definition of a Deligne tensor product. It's not complicated, at least. So this is equation 25. The first equality at least is equation 25. See equation 25. For the first equality, the second should be straightforward from the definition of Deligne tensor product. Let me write that. For the first, or maybe I can write it this way. Equation 25, and here easy from definition of Deligne tensor product. Okay. But remember, in section 2, we stated a proposition involving an equality between Frobenius point dimension and fully faithful to get an equivalence. So using this equality between Frobenius point dimension and this previous proposition, we can reformulate as follow. So by proposition 211.2, which is recalled as follow. Let me recall it maybe this color. So this was as follow. Let's see and D. B. So this is for that. B. Fusion category. Let F from D to C be a tensor functor. Then, if the Frobenius point dimension of D equals the Frobenius point dimension of C and F fully faithful, in fact, then F is an equivalence. What I wanted to say is that fully faithfulness for a functor is like if it's the same thing as saying that D embed into C. So you have something embedding into C. So if, in addition, the dimensions are the same, then exactly as in a linear algebra, then if you have a vector space embedding into another vector space, but with the same dimension, that they should be equal or isomorphic. That should be equal if it is sure. This is completely trivial. If you have a subspace of a vector space of same dimension, then they are equal. This is the same idea. Okay. So you have that. So what do we have? We have this. So we have this functor. We want to show that this implies that this functor is an equivalence. But we know that the fact that this functor is an equivalence is implied, it should be equivalent, in fact, by the fact that this functor is fully faithful and this, so the dimension of Frobenius point dimension of that equals Frobenius point dimension of that as it is written here. So we only need so this is equivalent to prove that this is equivalent to G to be fully faithful. So it suffices. So it suffices to show that C prime equal to VEC if and only if G is fully faithful. Okay. Now, we have another lemma, which is just after proposition 2.11, which is regarding fully faithfulness. So I did not wrote it in my note. So let me just read it. Page 23. So lemma 212 say that let C be a fusion category and let D1, D2 be fusion subcategory. Consider the tensor functor F from D1 the line tensor product D2 to C, where the restriction Di is natural embedding. of di into C. Then F is fully faithful if and only if the intersection of D1 and D2 is vec. So in our case, the fully faithfulness is equivalent to the intersection. So what? So is equivalent to C intersect C prime equal to vec. But here, so C is a full category, so it's just equivalent to say that C prime is equal to vec. Wait. No. Wait a minute. No. You have to be careful because here you have C and C hop. So yeah, this is equivalent to C intersection C hop is equal to vec. Sorry. And then we will deduce from the definition of C and C hop and the way it's embedded into the Drinfeld center that this is equivalent to that. Okay, so sorry for this confusion. So by C and C hop, I'm doubtless. So by lemma 212, this is equivalent to the condition that the image of C and C hop in the Drinfeld center intersect trivially. The image of C and C hop in the Drinfeld center of C intersect trivially. Intersect trivially. So that's okay. So this is okay by this lemma. There is nothing to check. It's immediate. Now, what is the meaning of this intersection? And in fact, we will explain in few details why this intersection is exactly C, the centralizer of C. So I will write it is a centralizer of C, and I will explain after that why. And this intersection is precisely the centralizer of C. So why? So C embed into the center, the Drinfeld center, as follow. An object map to this couple. So remember the notion of central Drinfeld center is defined by couple of elements where if the category is braided, then every object appears here. Otherwise, in particular, when the Drinfeld center, the Grothendieck degree is non-commutative, what you get here is not all the possible objects here, but just some object, not all. But here is braided, so no problem. So you have all the objects which appear here, but you have this natural isomorphism defined by the braiding. So for C is like that, and for C hop, it embed as follow. X map to X, and then you take C, the reverse braiding. Okay. So now, what is the reverse braiding? The reverse braiding is defined as CYX inverse. So this is just like that. This is a reverse braiding. But what? Yeah, the fact. So now we are interested in the intersection. So you have these two embedding. So now you can consider these two class of objects, and we are interested in the intersection. So we are interested in an object of this form, which is also of this form. So it's as follow. But Cyx equal Cyx inverse and now I am wait, I'm a little bit confused. I guess I made a typo somewhere. So where is my typo? Typo. So the point is here you have x. I put x on the right, and here the x is on the right, but here it's on the left, and so there is a typo. It should be like that. I guess the typo is there. X, Y. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So maybe I should write here just to avoid any confusion because I put it. So I should Y X is equal to X, Y inverse. So Y and X. Okay. So that's okay. So now we are looking to when we have this equality for all Y in C. But this equality is exactly this. So now you understood the point. This is the same as saying that Cxy composed with Cyx is the identity of X tensor Y. Like that. So this is equivalent to, the fact that this equality holds for all Y is equivalent to X in the centralizer by definition. Okay. So the intersection is exactly the centralizer. So so we are done. So that's okay. And I forgot to write the. Oh yeah, I put it there. I put it the square here. So this is just extra explanation. But we are done. That's okay. Okay. So remark. So first point of this remark is that so the first part of the remark is saying that this the existence of this is evident since C and C op centralize each other. So I am not sure to understand what does this mean that the existence is evident. Are they wanted to say is evident as a braided functor? So I will just explain. In fact, for the same reason, for very similar reason, which written here, why C and C, the embedding of C and C op centralize each other. So let me write the sentence and then write my question. And then I will explain why they centralize each other. Remark 3.8. A. So in proposition, so the previous proposition, third point. So regarding factorizable, existence of G is evident. Since the embedding of C and C op centralize each other. So what I was a bit confused by evident. So evident as a braided functor. It was unclear to me. Anyway, since it's just a remark. So of course, when you but we already discussed this kind of functor from the tensor product. So should we come back to what we said before to prove this? Or maybe there is a uniqueness also. I don't know. Maybe they are talking about uniqueness. Anyway, in any case, you have an embedding of C and C up here, and you have to make concretely this functor. You cannot just say, okay, this functor exists, blah, blah, blah. We need to say it exists and to say that it is unique and braided. At least there is a unique braided one. So I don't know which one of this assumption, this property is evident according to them. Anyway, otherwise you can see that as an exercise if you want to think. I did not think more about that. So if you want to you can see that as an exercise if you like. Otherwise, I did not consider too much time over that. Maybe it's completely straightforward, but anyway. So since the fusion subcategory C and C op embedded in the Drinfeld center centralize each other. Centralize each other. And I will just explain why they centralize each other. But in fact, the reason is very similar to what we wrote before. Okay, so we have that. So, yeah. So it's not so. Yeah, it's not so. It's not completely covered by what is written here. It is very similar, but you need to consider the braiding in the Drinfeld center. So you have you compose. So you will take an element here as embedded here, an element here as embedded here. So an element here, an element here. You say Y here to change. And you will consider the braiding of these two elements. So the braiding of one element of this form with one element of this form. So I wrote directly the definition of the reverse braiding, composed with the double braiding for that. Comma, like that. And so maybe somewhere before, but in EGNO book, you can see so in the section or equation 815, I remember. I don't remember. I guess it's equation. So when you have so in the Drinfeld center, the braiding is defined as follow. So you have Z in general with the natural isomorphism omega gamma Z prime gamma prime. What is this braiding? Defined as directly the natural isomorphism gamma prime for the object Z. Okay. This is the definition of the braiding in the Drinfeld center. So if you apply this definition, so this is equal to, so wait. So you apply this definition. So you get something which is equal to okay, so let me see. So you need to consider here. So you have two things to consider, this one and this one. What you will write is always the second. So this one, the second, so this one, applied to the first. So here, and so you will get the second applied, the second natural isomorphism applied to the first object, like that. And same for the other, C, Y, X. Here the second is this one, and the first object is here, so it's okay. So this is immediate by definition. Okay. They centralize each other. Yeah, so I forgot to recall that why it is equal, why they centralize each other. So you have the definition. So to prove they centralize each other, you have to prove that equal to that. But this is equal to this is equal to this. But if you look carefully, this is not a double braiding. This is just an object of a morphism and its inverse. We have an isomorphism and its inverse. So this is automatically the identity. There is nothing to prove because you have the inverse. This is the inverse. So automatically, it is the identity. So automatically, this object and this object centralize each other. So automatically, the embedding of this here and the embedding of this here centralize each other. And we have to understand as an exercise here in what this property imply evidently that G, there is a unique braided functor of this form. Okay. So let me just read something. Page 23. Yeah. not clear to me what they mean by evident because in lemma 212, as I read before, you have two subcategories in a category, D1, D2 in C, and they consider the functor from D1 de l'intensor D2 to C. Yeah, so here the functor is, so the existence of the functor is immediate. There is no, the functor is defined like that. So you have just X and Y defined as X tensor Y. Because you know that C and C op embed into the center, so you can define like that. So you have the, as long as you have the embedding. So the existence of the functor is okay. So what may be not okay, as I said, as I wrote, what should be proved is that this functor is braided functor. So I guess I am correct when I say that what should be proved as an exercise, but it should be straightforward, is that this functor defined like that is a braided functor. It's a unique braided functor. Okay, so wait. So second remark. B. So the remark is just, as I already mentioned before, the condition 3 mean factorizability. So this condition 3 in proposition is a condition. Yeah, the equivalence condition. Yeah. This means factorizability. Proposition 3.7 is commonly referred to as factorizability. Commonly referred to as factorizability. And this notion pre-exists in the off-algebra theory and notion of factorizable off-algebra, so factorizable off-algebra. So according to this definition, is just so you have a definition which is purely off-algebraic, but according to this definition of tensor category, it's just saying that the category of representation of off-algebra is non-degenerate. So this is a much easier way to define factorizable. Otherwise, you need to define the notion of quasi-triangular off-algebra, which exactly mean that the category of representation is braided. And let me recall, I guess I already mentioned that before. Triangular is equivalent to symmetric. So quasi-triangular means braided. So quasi-triangular in off-algebra framework means braided, means the representation category is braided. Triangular means symmetric. Factorizable means non-degenerate. Okay, so okay, so next corollary. Okay. Okay. So the next corollary is just saying that the Drinfeld center of the fusion category is non-degenerate. So why this is a corollary? Because in fact, in the Annals paper of Ettinghoff, Nishi, Shostrik. No, not the Annals paper. The EMRN paper. They prove that the Drinfeld center of fusion category is factorizable. And so now if you use our definition of factorizable, it's the same as saying non-degenerate. So we deduce that the Drinfeld center is non-degenerate. But this is also the proposition 8.6.3 in Egno book, in fact, where they are proved in more generality that the Drinfeld center of a tensor category is factorizable. This is more general because the fusion category is a finite semi-simple tensor category. So between fusion and tensor, you have two assumptions, finite and semi-simple. So the result in Egno book is much more general. But I guess the proof should be similar. So, corollary 3.9. Let C be the fusion category. Then it's Drinfeld center. So remember, the Drinfeld is already a co-author of this paper, so that may be a reason why they did not choose to write Drinfeld center, but just center. Then its center is non-degenerate. Degenerate. Oof. So, in an IMRN paper of Mintikov, Nishi-Shostrik, they know that the Drinfeld center is factorizable. So it's non-degenerate by the previous result. So it was shown in IMRN paper of Mintikov, Nishi-Shostrik in 2000. So I guess I precised IMRN because in 2004 they may have several papers. I don't remember. Proposition 4.4. That the center, the Drinfeld center of a fusion category is factorizable. And then you just need to see proposition 3.7, third point. Okay. Okay. And as I said, you have a much more general statement in the book regarding factorizable. So see also Egno book proposition 863. Let C be a tensor category. Then the Drinfeld center of C is factorizable. It's non-degenerate. There it's written like that, factorizable. It's factorizable. In this case, I don't know. They may not define the notion of non-degenerate for a non-finite tensor category because then you have a S matrix which will be infinite. So I guess in the book they define S matrix for the finite case. But that's nice because then you see you get the notion of factorizable do not require the category to be finite. So it seems that the most efficient definition, if you want to generalize to the non-finite case, is factorizable. Okay. So I will have just time to state, but no time to prove the next theorem, which generalizes the result of Neuger. So the following theorem generalize Muger 2003 theorem 3.2 regarding modular category. So here we stated yeah, we don't need premodular and we don't need non-degenerate, so it's double generalization. Theorem 3.10. So let me start. Let's see. Be a braided fusion category. And let B and D be a fusion subcategory. Fusion subcategory. Then the following identity hold. The following identity hold. So the categorical dimension of D intersection D prime times the categorical dimension of D is equal to the categorical dimension of D intersection B prime, so the centralizer of B, times the categorical dimension of B. And this will be equation 33. And there will be, so I will write this tomorrow. In particular, you will be an equation 34, where when B equals C, in particular, if B equals C, you have something. B equals C. You have something I will write tomorrow. And again, in particular, if C non-degenerate, you have again something. Okay, so let's see that tomorrow. Okay. We'll see you tomorrow.